We're looking forward to exploring how to unlock pupils' literacy potential, as it says on the slide here. So my name is Yvonne McLean. I'm an Education Support Officer with Falkirk Children's Services, and one of my responsibilities is to be a key member of the literacy team here. And we've also got my colleague Kerry Abercrombie, who, as you can see, is Curriculum Development Officer for Digital Learning. And we've also got Louise Amos, who will be speaking with you as well. She's giving you a wee wave at the moment. And Louise is one of our support teachers for specific learning differences as well. And Louise's colleague Judith Davis sometimes is part of these sessions as well, but can't be with us this afternoon. So a huge thank you to Kerry, to Louise and to Jude, who are enabling us to have this session today. This is the last of our digital literacy sessions, if you like, for this session, and it's been wonderful to work with so many folks, not only from Falkirk schools and early learning centres, but also colleagues from Clacks, West Lothian and Stirling as well, so you're very welcome. And as we tried to make clear both in the descriptor and in my wee email to you all this morning, this is all about tools which are compatible with iPads, so we'll not be upset if you've just suddenly realised that you don't use an iPad and that the session won't be relevant to you. So don't worry about slipping away if that's the case for you. So despite huge adversity, Kerry has managed to at least show the slide on the page. We'll have to leave it in that format just now. So I've introduced all of us, and in the next slide, you will see a compass point from an OECD Vision 2030 report, which those of you who've been to each of my sessions will probably be fed up looking at, but I feel it's a really useful image to capture the fact that we're educating our children and young people for their future. And this is the international vision for the future of education. You can see, obviously, there's lots of information on the compass itself, but it's the bits around about it which I'm quite interested in and which link to what we're doing today. So you might just about make out on the left-hand side, sort of top left, about between 9 and 10 o'clock on the clock face, there is a recognition that we, as in education practitioners, will have to be collaboratively agentic. So we'll have to be partly in control of the way education works. We'll have to be empowered in the creation and the design of the curriculum that we deliver. And down bottom left, sort of 7 o'clock-ish, you can see that wee student, that wee learner as well, who has that agency, that sense of control over their own education. So these sessions are all about looking at how digital tools can support our children and young people to be as agentic or as independent and as empowered in their own learning progress as possible. And although a lot of the tools that we'll talk about tonight you might think of as accessibility tools, we're hoping that we can go beyond only the accessibility to considering how these tools can really enrich the literacy learning and teaching, and in particular those creating and presenting skills. So you might think of some of the things that we show you this afternoon as vital to some, but valuable to all. That's our wee catchphrase, and we try and slip it in to every single session. So what I've done in the next slide is just put some information that you've probably seen before. The Oracy 21 programme, Oracy Voice 21 rather, is a programme that a lot of you might be familiar with. It's very well respected and valued. But I've picked out these 3 pictures here just to highlight how essential the kind of creating and presenting input can be, the kind of support for listening and talking, how important it actually is. So as you'll see on the slide bottom left, they're suggesting that on entry to school, children who are disadvantaged, their spoken language will be significantly lower than their more advantaged peers. And in the middle section, it talks about that gap growing as children move through school. So from just a few months gap at the age of 6 to a 5-year difference by the age of 14 is what they're claiming. And in the bottom right, the yellow light bulb is suggesting that when the children and young people leave school, if that gap is not closed, then the poor verbal communication skills that they might have will make it less likely that they'll find employment, and more likely, they're claiming, to suffer from mental or health difficulties in general. So you can see the potential impact and importance of creating and presenting. And in the next slide, I've pulled a wee quotation from the Listening and Talking PDF, the support documents, which you'll find in Education Scotland's section of the National Improvement Hub. Again, just highlighting how central to learning and to the whole curriculum, really, listening and talking actually are. So no surprises there. And the next slide just takes that a wee bit further, but using a wee quotation from Building the Curriculum 4, which focuses in on skills for learning, life and work. So what I wanted to do with that slide really was again just highlight how central to the social and intellectual benefits of the sort of wider Scottish economy these skills are. And you'll be familiar with them as skills for learning, life and work, core skills, meta skills, soft skills. So in different places, they're called different things. And then in the next slide, I'm getting a wee bit fancy-nancy by just pointing out that the Curriculum for Excellence is obviously organised. So the what of Curriculum for Excellence is encompassed in these 4 contexts for learning. So the curriculum that you'll all be busy helping to deliver is divided into those 4 contexts. And when I was thinking about literacy, then you can think of the sort of core or discrete literacy and English skills, which you might be interested in exploring this afternoon through some of the tools which Kerry will be sharing with us. Or it could be that you're a subject specialist teacher in secondary, or that you're particularly interested in developing children's understanding of the language that links to certain subject areas. So that kind of disciplinary literacy, the skills that are highlighted in different subject areas across the curriculum. Or it could be that you're really aware of how the talking, listening, the creating, the presenting skills that you're looking to develop in your children need to be applied right across the curriculums, that idea of literacy across learning. So I suppose I'm just suggesting there that if you're thinking about how you could use these tools, maybe let's think about all 4 contexts. So not only in interdisciplinary learning and the curriculum areas and subjects, but possibly ways in which your children or young folk could use their creating and presenting skills to contribute to the ethos and life of the school, or as part of the opportunities for personal achievement. So I'm thinking about opportunities for pupil voice or specific qualifications like Duke of Edinburgh or John Muir Awards. It could be that there are opportunities for these skills to be developed in these contexts also. So I just thought it might be useful just to point out a few different ways in which you might want to think about the digital tools that you're going to see. And then in the next slide, just for the benefit of Falkirk folk probably, but those of you from our other local authorities will see overlap with your own progression pathways and with the lines of development in Education Scotland. So tonight we're probably going to be focusing a lot on the tools for listening and talking that you can see in this line of development and the experiences and outcomes. And it could be that English 03A line of development at each level, which you think we'll be focusing on. That certainly covers a lot of the skills that we'll be looking at. And then in the next slide, the other obvious bit of progress that creating and presenting links to is the creating texts organiser or sub-organiser within listening and talking. And that's a literacy experience 10A as well. So these are the most obvious organisers and sub-organisers and specific E's and O's within literacy and English, which we'll be looking at this afternoon. But in the next slide, I'm just highlighting that we are not only looking at literacy this afternoon, we'll also be linking with technologies. And I've picked out that statement there from the start of the E's and O's in technologies, just to highlight the overlap between the specific skills in literacy and technologies that are, I suppose, truly interdisciplinary. And then the next slide, I've done the same as before. So with the digital literacy element of the technologies E's and O's, you can see the sub-organiser using digital products and services in a variety of contexts. That's obviously linked to the creating and presenting skills that you're going to be working on with your young people. But in order for them to create and present, they're going to have to be able to search, to process, and to manage information responsibly as well. So just highlighting the skills and the connections there with both the literacy and the digital literacy and technologies elements. That was the first thing I wanted to do. And then the second thing really in the next slide is just to highlight how we want to work with you this afternoon. So what we'd love to do is for Kerry's going to go through and share the digital tools which might be useful to you and your learners. And Louise has put in wee sort of pauses now and again for you to share any observations or thoughts or ideas. And it would be really good for us to get a wee dialogue going. And just to help that along the way, I thought, well, why not put the moderation cycle up there? You see at the top centre, this is the tool, the cycle that helps us to structure our learning experiences. So we know that the learners are at the heart of every stage of the cycle. And then we're thinking about those E's and O's that are going to meet our learners' needs in creating and presenting. We're thinking about our learning intentions, our success criteria, and we're thinking about the kind of evidence that we might generate and the assessment. So I thought it would be good just to highlight that so that as you're going through the session or listening in tonight, lots of wee ideas will be popping into your head. You might want to share them in the chat box, and then we could discuss them at the wee pause points in the presentation as well. So it'd be great for all of us to learn from each other by hearing about those ideas and suggestions that you might have. So I hope that all sounds sensible. And what I'd love to do now is to hand over to Kerry, who will start talking you through the kind of digital tools that might be useful to you. And what I'll do is make sure I'm taking a decent register in the background and make sure you all get accredited for your attendance this afternoon. If there is anyone sharing a device with someone else, please put a wee message in the chat pane for us and I'll take a note of that as we go through the session. Thanks very much, Kerry, and I'll hand over to you.
Thank you so much, Yvonne. Good afternoon, folks. As Yvonne has said, I am Kerry Abercrombie. I'm your Curriculum Development Officer for Digital Learning here at Falkirk Council. And I'm very pleased that we have people from Falkirk Council and our surrounding local councils with us today as well. Just to reiterate what Yvonne said at the very start, just in case you are late in or you missed what she said, this is a session that is focused on iPad technology or tools that are available and to be used in conjunction with iPad. So if you're not working in an iPad environment, you may well want to excuse yourself, which you are more than welcome to do. There would be no point in you sitting all of the afternoon looking at something that might not be so useful to you. I also do want to point out that as Yvonne said, like, we are talking mostly about talking and listening today, even though it's called the creation of text. And I do want to say there's nothing here that's going to like revolutionise per se talking and listening, but there is a lot to think about when we think about our approach to talking and listening and what we count as talking and listening as well. So what we're going to do today, hopefully, is we're going to identify how specific digital tools can enrich pupil presentations. We'll also be looking at giving examples of how these tools can assist with the development of talking and listening. Then we're hopefully going to be able to plan how to use digital tools to enable learners to present information while developing talking and listening across the curriculum. And also hopefully see how digital tools can support pupil progression of talking and listening and other literacy skills. Now I'm going to move on to the next slide, and I do apologise that you are seeing it in this view. Believe me, no one is pained more about this than I am. So how we're actually going to do that, we'll look at, as I said, tools to help present in class. Then we'll look at opportunities afforded by presenting through video tools. And then we'll also take a look at what opportunities are made possible when presenting through audio tools. So we're going to start with the sort of traditional presenting in class, and then we're going to look at maybe some more multimodal things that you might want to make use of. So we're going to start then with presenting in class. And here I'm really talking about the traditional style of talk that we're all familiar with. So young people standing up in front of a class to deliver a presentation. And this is something that, as I'm sure you're all very much aware of, that is very, very common in all types of classrooms across all schools. And it's probably one of the most common ways to assess talk alongside perhaps group discussion. And it is a very important skill, and it's certainly a style of assessing talk that is not going to be going anywhere fast. Now, later on, as I said, we'll talk about potential other ways that you might use talking and presenting in class. But let's look first at tools that might help us with this really, really familiar type of presentation. So I think it's really important to note that many practitioners using digital tools already to help with this kind of talking, like they already use them, they already love them. The most common, I think, would probably be something like PowerPoint, which is ubiquitous when it comes to solo talk or doing a presentation in class. It's often the first thing that young people and teachers go to and gravitate towards. And that's because quite often there's the need or the want to make a visual aid that goes along with a talk. Then, of course, you have access to digital tools for researching and writing a presentation and all that kind of thing. And those have largely been covered in previous sessions that we've done in this series. But today, I want to start with things that can help in the process of preparing for a presentation in front of class. So I'm going to start with rehearsing. So as an English teacher, I find that this is one of the most challenging areas to support young people in. They're happy to make the visual aid, they're happy to, go and do all the research and stuff, but trying to get young people to rehearse a solo talk is something that I find quite difficult, and I'm sure that you are the same. Now, we don't have necessarily time to rehearse with them one-on-one as a teacher and a student. Oftentimes, I have found that the only solution is to either ask them to rehearse at home or practice at home with an adult, or to pair them up and have them practicing with each other. So I've got two tools to show you today, which I think might help in making the process of rehearsing maybe a little bit more exciting, a little bit more interesting, get a little bit of engagement going. So both of these could have an impact in developing talking skills, specifically elements of talk such as pace, tone, variation, pronunciation, expression, etc., etc. So the first one is PowerPoint Presenter Coach, which is available on PowerPoint on iPad and also PC. Now, it does need a microphone in order to work. So obviously with an iPad, the microphone is already built in. If you want to try this on desktop computers, you will have to make sure that they do have microphone accessibility. And on that note, just a wee disclaimer, a common sort of thing you're going to see throughout the session today is that because a lot of these tools use audio, I can't show you a live demonstration as I usually would do, because live demonstrations make use of the microphone, and my microphone is currently being used by WebEx. So it can't be used by another app at the same time. So to combat this, there are a couple of video demos as part of this presentation. And this first one, Microsoft Presenter Coach, is one of them. So this is PowerPoint Presenter Coach. And what it does is it allows any user to rehearse their presentation. And you will see as I am talking that it's going to give me some messages at the top. Now, if I start to talk really, really fast and I start to say things that are really, really speedy and it's too fast for anyone to hear, it is probably going to tell me at some point that I am talking too fast and that I have to slow down a little bit. So it's coaching me through the process of talking, which is what we're speaking about today, talking and listening. Another thing that it will do is basically like if I start to basically use filler words, it will tell me that I am using fillers, and it will suggest that I stop doing that. If I talk in a monotone voice, it is also going to pick that up, perhaps not at the top just now, but possibly at the end in the summary, because it also detects when the tone is not quite right. And there you go, it's also caught the fact that I'm speaking quite slow. So I can also pause it if I want to stop rehearsing and start it, like if I get interrupted or if someone wants to speak to me, and start it again just by pressing the play button down here. And I can move through the slides forward and backwards just by using the little arrows on either side. Now, if I press stop, what is going to happen is it's going to ask if I am sure. I am going to do end session. And you'll see that we get this summary. So you can see that it tells me the total time that I've spent, the number of slides that I've rehearsed. It's telling me that I've got some fillers that I need to fix if I want to be more polished and confident. And I can tap on learn more. And it will take me to some information about delivery and pace and so on. It also gives me my pace. It gives me my pronunciation. It's telling me about repetitive language there. It's telling me about pitch, etc., etc. So that's a wee video just showing you the sort of highlights of PowerPoint that's presenter coach, and hopefully you can see how useful that might be for some of our children and young people, especially those who perhaps find it difficult to present in front of friends, or if there's not enough time to present in front of little small groups before you go ahead and go up on that stage. It's that instant feedback, it's that immediate feedback on things like their pitch, their tone, their pace, etc., that they can practice and practice and practice, and they are going to get some sort of engagement from the device and from the technology as well. So just to show you, just in case you're not quite sure how you access that, so I'm just in PowerPoint here, as you can see, and across the top, I'm just going to tap on slideshow. And then you can see underneath there, I have just the button that says rehearse with coach preview. And I would just tap on that, and that's what would take me into PowerPoint presenter coach. I'm not actually going to tap on it just now, just in case it does something to my WebEx, but it's just up there in slideshow. You'll normally be on home to start with. You just swipe over to slideshow and then tap rehearse with coach, and that'll take them in on their iPad to that coaching process. So really helpful, really useful, and an excellent tool, I think, for our young people. So next up then, if I just go back to this slide, is Pages. And again, this is about rehearsing. So we know, or some of us know, that Pages is the built-in sort of word processor. It's the Microsoft Word, it's the Google Docs of the Apple universe. But one of the cool things that it does that I think is useful for talking and listening is the presenter mode. So this one I can give you a live demonstration of. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go out of PowerPoint and I'm going to go into Pages, and I am just going to open up this first document that I have here, which is this little speech that I have prepared. So this would be maybe a script that I had, or the notes for my talk, for example. And what I'm going to do is I am just going to tap on the three little dots in the top right hand corner, and I'm going to choose presenter mode, which is the fourth option down. And what this does is it's going to go into this mode. And as soon as I tap on the screen, cue the Star Wars music, we are going to get a rolling. Oh, no, we're not. We should be able to get, let me just fix this auto scroll. We're going to get a rolling, almost like an auto cue version of our piece of writing. So if I just stop it for a moment and just go back up into the little double A at the top right hand corner, you'll see that I can change the text size if I want to. I can change the background color, I can change the font, all that sort of stuff. And really importantly, I can also change how quickly or slowly the presenter mode auto scrolls, which I think is quite useful. And it's really simple and really easy to use. You just tap it to stop it and tap it to start it again. And if I want to go back to the top, I can just drag it down so that I'm back at the top, and tap it again to start it again. So a really simple feature, but something that I think is really quite interesting when it comes to preparing for a talk, because often one of the biggest challenges is that children have to go with the flow. Like, if you get my meaning, they can't just stop and say, oh no, I've made a mistake in the middle of presenting to the class. They kind of have to be resilient and just go with it if they make a little mistake. And I think this kind of emulates that process. And it really gets them thinking about the immediacy required when presenting in front of an audience. And it kind of gives them a chance to practice that. Another thing that I really like it for actually is using it as an auto cue. So when we come to talk about video later on in the session, this is something that could be used in conjunction with another iPad, which is filming. And that'll mean that the pupils can be supported by an auto cue as opposed to having the notes. How often do you see it? They've written their notes in front of them. They're doing a little piece to camera and their head is like this because they're reading off their notes. Whereas if they have the auto cue just behind the iPad that's filming them, then they'll be able to keep their heads up. And it again helps with that presentation and engaging with the audience. Now, I also think this could actually be quite useful as a reading task. So pairing young people up and asking them to read to each other from the auto cue to practice reading, working on that fluency, working on the reading aloud, working on your delivery, even maybe for your learners that could handle it, putting in some deliberate mistakes so that your partner has to deal with the errors on the auto cue as they come up. See if you can spot the mistakes as you're reading aloud. Right, so I'm going to move on and I'm just going to talk a little bit about actually presenting. So we've rehearsed and we're actually getting ready to present. Now, many of us will ask children to make some form of presentation, either on PowerPoint or Google Slides or Keynote or whatever, and then we ask them to present it in class. And for me, when it comes to talking, this technologically enabled environment, whether it's shared iPads, whether it's one-to-one iPads or whatever, it makes it so much easier to deal with this, particularly the one-to-one environment. So previously what I would have had is I would have probably had children all bring a USB stick in and you would have to plug that in and the people at IT would go mad because you've plugged in an unknown USB stick into the computer and all sorts of things. Or they would email it to you and then you had to troll through all your emails to try and find the one that you were looking for, etc., etc. Now, if there was ever a better advert for using virtual learning environments such as Teams or Google Classroom, where the teacher can just bring up the child's presentation immediately and then they can kind of stand up and go for it, I can't think of anything better as an endorsement for that, having access to everyone's work all of the time. But that's not what we're talking about today. We're specifically talking about young people presenting on their devices. So how is this different? And the answer is being able to connect one-to-one iPads to the board immediately. So pupils can work on their presentation on their device or shared together on a shared device. And then when it comes their turn to present, they simply have to mirror their screen to the classroom screen. So you can see I've got Apple TV logo up here. Obviously, Apple TV is one of the ways to do this. I do understand that not everybody has Apple TV, and we will come to other solutions in a second. But if you do have Apple TV, I'm sure that you will agree, if you've made any sort of use of it, that it is a game changer. Now, it's just a reminder that every iPad can connect to the Apple TV, not just the teacher's iPad. So you can get children to connect to the Apple TV to do their presentations, but they can also connect to the Apple TV to show you great working or to show you a process or to show the class a process that maybe you weren't sure how to do, that they've figured out, to share really good work, etc., etc. However, when we're talking about actually doing a presentation, all I have to do if I want to start my presentation is swipe down from the top right-hand corner, and this will open up my control center, and you will see next to the little padlock, I've got a little square in a square, and that is the screen mirroring button. And I just get the child to tap on that and tap on the Apple TV in our classroom, and they will be given a wee code, they'll type it in, and they will automatically be presenting on the screen. So just a wee sort of step-by-step here. So you go into your control center, the screen mirroring button will come up. When you press it, it will give you the list of all the Apple TVs nearby. You need to know which one's yours. And then once it's connected, a 4-digit code will appear on the Apple TV. The children type it into their device and then they will immediately be presenting. Now, if you don't have the ability to use Apple TV because you don't have an Apple TV, these two things are the things that you need. So they're little connectors. They are relatively cheap. You can pick one up for under a tenner. And what they do is they either connect an HDMI, which is the one on the left-hand side, or a VGA, which is the one, the old-fashioned sort of looking one with all the pins on it on the right-hand side. And it just simply connects your monitor or your projector, sorry, into this little connection, which you stick into the iPad through the charging cable, and you will be able to present your screen on the big screen. Now, if you don't have an Apple TV and you're interested in this kind of connector, please get in touch with me. I would rather sort of speak to you individually about your setup rather than try and give every possible piece of advice to everybody that might be on the call today. But if you want more advice on HDMI or VGA connectors, you can let me know via email, because it is, as I say, a case-by-case basis. So we can mirror the screens to the device. So what? Like, why does it matter? And for me, every time I use Apple TV, it's because I can stand with the device in my hands and I can manipulate the screen. So I can use presenter view in both Keynote and PowerPoint. And what presenter view allows me to do is both control the presentation and see my notes at the same time in front of me. So this means I don't have to use a clicker. I don't have to have the teacher or another member of the class sit next to the computer and move the slides on for me. I am in total control of the presentation. And while this might not seem like a big deal, I know myself, if I'm presenting, I feel much more confident and secure in what I am doing if I am in control of what is happening on the screen behind me, or in this case, in front of me. And Yvonne will testify to that to you. And part of me wanting to control the screen is a little bit about why we were so late in today, because I really, for me, I feel so much more confident if I'm the person that's controlling my presentation. So let's take a wee look at what it actually does. I've already got, so you can see what I mean, I've already got the Keynote presenter mode here, or presenter view. So while the rest of the class on the Apple TV would just be seeing the slide, when I look at my iPad, can see the current slide. I can also see my script. Anything I've written in the presenter notes comes up on the right-hand side, and I can use my finger to scroll up and down through that. If I want to move through the slides, I can just swipe left or right, and it will move me through all of my different slides. I can also see in the top left that I'm on slide 2 of 20 in this instance. And I also have the time as well. So if I know that I need to be finished by 16:20, I know it's currently 16:18 and I've got 2 minutes left. So really helpful, really useful, and for me, much better than a PowerPoint that the teacher is controlling and then holding a piece of paper. It just gives them that sort of experience of being in control of their presentation and being able to, have a bit of independence with it. PowerPoint presenter mode, much of a muchness, to be totally honest. It kind of looks very similar. You can see here a little bit more complex along the top right hand corner, but kind of the same thing. I have my slide that I'm currently presenting in the middle. Then on the right hand side, I have anything that is in my presenter notes, and I can just scroll up and down with my finger to view those. And then at the bottom, I can just swipe left and right and jump to or through and between any of the rest of the slides in my presentation. Obviously, slight difference here is we don't have the big massive timer in the middle at the top, but we do still have the time in the top left hand corner if we need to refer to the time. And so I think for me, the key thing here is that we bring together the visual elements. So we've prepared the speech in the form of notes or maybe a script, and we put those notes into the visual document as presenter notes, which means that when we're making the presentation, we're thinking about the whole thing as an entity. And I think that often makes for a bit of a better presentation. We're not thinking about our script and being able to say the script as being separate to the visual elements. We're thinking about it all as one big piece. And of course, as you've seen with the PowerPoint Presenter Coach, it means that we can practice our presentation in Presenter Coach as well. Now, obviously, this depends on the level that you're working at. The notes might be a script, it might just be bullet points. I know for me, that sometimes also depended on the individual child. Also, what's really good about it is when it comes to sharing, I can get the pupils to upload this PowerPoint or that Keynote to Google Classroom or Microsoft Teams as a PDF with the notes as well if I need a copy. So rather than having their script or their notes and the visual element, if they just export the PDF with the presenter notes, I get everything all in one place and I can have a look at and keep it for my records. Now, while we're speaking about the visual elements of it, I just want to give a little nod to some of the tools that you can use for creating visual aids. Now, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because I feel that it is such a well-developed area of practice, but just the two tools that I think really are available that you may or may not have kind of used before, but which can help in making visual aids. So the first one is specifically PowerPoint Designer. I am not naive enough to think that anybody here is unfamiliar with PowerPoint. But PowerPoint Designer is a piece of software that's specifically built into PowerPoint on iPad and PC. And what it does is it just makes suggestions for how slides should be laid out once you have put in all of the different elements that you are planning to include. You can see that it gives you a couple of different ideas on how it could be laid out. So obviously this one's been laid out pretty well to begin with, but if it was just text boxes and images, it would give you a whole bunch of different choices. And all you do is tap on it and that will change the design. So helpful to know if you have children who maybe are not super great at creating something that is kind of makes sense and is visually stimulating. That just gives them a little bit of a wee hand. Now, the other one is Keynote, and Keynote I'm sure that some of you will not be as familiar with as you are maybe with PowerPoint, but I just wanted to give a little shout out to Keynote because not only is it actually my favourite app of all time, but it has some huge benefits for presenting because it's specifically designed for iPad. So if I just go out of PowerPoint and I go into Keynote, you will see that if I just go back, sorry, had to move iPads at the last minute, so I'm on something slightly different. So if I go into a Keynote that I already have, let's just choose this one, you can see that on first glance, it looks a lot more simple than PowerPoint, but it actually does all that PowerPoint does and more. And I actually think that it's an extremely reasonable option for younger children compared to PowerPoint because a lot of the buttons are dual coded, so it looks like what it does. So if I want to add in some kind of media, I am going to tap on the little photo button at the top, and you will see that that gives me the choice of photo, camera, record audio, live video, etc., etc. Now, for me, the biggest benefit of Keynote over a PowerPoint is because it's built specifically for an iPad, it's much more seamless if children want to add drawings, if children want to add video, or if children want to add audio. So if you're just doing text and pictures, PowerPoint will work totally fine. If you want to do audio or video or drawing, I do think that Keynote handles this slightly better, well, a lot better actually than PowerPoint. So it's just something to be aware of. So I've already got a drawing in there, so I'm not going to add a drawing. But if I go to photo or video, what you'll see is it opens up my photo gallery and I can choose from videos, photos, etc., etc. So I'll just pop in this little video here. And what you'll see is if they want to insert any kind of videos into their presentation, it will just take them straight in from, I maybe shouldn't have picked one that was 45 seconds long when I'm on a meeting, but it'll just pop them straight in to the presentation. And then as soon as they hit the present button, they'll be able to play that video within their presentation. Now, if they are connected to an Apple TV, this will automatically play through the speaker system, or it should automatically play through the speaker system of your I'm just going to come off that, of your classroom. So I'm just going to come out because that was a bit too long because it was a wee 45-second clip. If I wasn't on a meeting, it would have jumped in straight away. Now, the other thing that I really like it for, particularly again with younger children, for the drawing stuff, is once you've made a drawing, it's very, very easy to animate it. Actually, there's a lot of projects and a lot of resources out there for animating on Keynote. But let's say we were doing some kind of graph, or we'd done something that involves being able to see how the child arrived at that process. So let's say they're talking about like filling up water cups or filling up reservoirs or something like that, and they've drawn a little diagram of the reservoir. Once you've got your drawing in, you can simply tap on animate, and then at the bottom, if you go to add build in and choose line draw, you can see that you will get the drawing animated exactly as the child drew it. So for younger children, really, really great to see their sort of processes and how they've gone about drawing, and where their sort of imagination has come in. But in terms of like talking and listening, really good way to add some really easily add some quite striking visuals, really super customizable, and really easy to do. So I think that that's also worth sort of knowing about. But I'll go back into PowerPoint just now, and I'm going to stop to take a wee breath and invite Louise and Yvonne to chip in if they have anything on those things. So that was presenting to the screen, having your PowerPoint or your Keynote in presenter mode so that you have your notes and your visuals at the same time, and then a couple of visual ideas with Keynote and with PowerPoint Designer.
Hi folks. Well, I've been busy working away on the register in the background, but I've been stretching my ears about the Keynote because that's not an app that's familiar to me. And I saw in one of the schools I was in yesterday, the pupil digital leaders had put displays up with a list of the expertise that they have. And a couple of the digital leaders had highlighted that they were expert in Keynote and that they could support any other young folk with that. And I thought that was wonderful, and it made me want to learn more about Keynote. So it's been great to get a wee taster of how that works, Kerry, and I can see the advantages for younger children. So
yeah, I mean, I think for the talking and listening stuff, it's quite like it's a presentation software, but
yeah.
I think what's really good about Keynote, and I'm happy to talk to anyone about it if they want to find out more, is even though it's a presentation software, the thing I use it for least is presentations. I use it to draw, I use it to do like live notes for live meetings, I use it as a notepad, I use it to make animations, I use it to make green screen effects, video editing stuff, like all kinds of things on Keynote.
So it's flexible.
Very flexible.
Yeah. I was
Yeah, it's
wondering.
fantastic.
Yeah, sorry, Louise, on you go.
No, I was just going to say exactly the same as you, everyone. I wasn't as familiar with Keynote using it for presenting, so that was great.
Yeah. I wonder if anybody out there's having thoughts or ideas that they want to share or pop in the chat box. I'm going to have a wee scroll down just to see. Any thoughts? I noticed Sharon had put a wee question in a wee while back. I'm not quite sure at what stage we were at that point, Sharon, but hopefully that question, is this Keynote or PowerPoint, has been answered for you. But let us know if it hasn't.
Oh yeah, I see that now. Sorry, Sharon, I didn't see that at the time. It was. Okay, good. Good. But that's the thing, is when you're using them as a presentation software, they are much of a muchness on the sort of presentation side. They do kind of the same thing. I guess it's partially to do with what experience do your children already have, that they're already familiar with, that they're confident in, and also how easy it is for them to do what it is that they want to do for their presentation and their visual stuff. The other thing that Keynote has, which people don't necessarily know about, is dynamic backgrounds. So rather than have a static background, they can have one that like moves, and they can put their pictures and everything over the top of it. But this is not a session on Keynote, so I'll leave that for another time.
Thanks,
right,
Kerry.
I'm going to move on. So presenting using video tools. So we're moving away from the traditional solo talk then, and want to talk a little bit about the potential of using video tools to capture talk. So to many of you, this will seem obvious. To some of you, it might be something that you have perhaps not thought about from a talking and listening perspective specifically. So I used to teach School of Media at Larbert High School, which was a specialist BGE media programme. And in S1, that meant that all the School of Media pupils were grouped together in one class, and when they came to English, that was their School of Media time. So me as the teacher, I had to provide them with a media-focused curriculum, but I also had to ensure that they hit all of the usual S1 English experiences and outcomes. And oftentimes this would be for things like the class novel, for example. We would maybe look at a book that specifically has a film adaptation as well. So we could look at both the book and the film and start building skills of both literacy through reading traditional text and also film literacy. Or if they were doing personal writing, a very common thing that we would do is we would make them do their piece of personal writing, and then we would get them to film pitch it as a movie. So the movie of your personal story, your biography or your biopic, and make the DVD covers that go along with it. So they kind of make a film out of their personal writing. Stuff like that, that basically hits all sort of English outcomes and also hits some of the film curriculum stuff as well. So when it came to hitting the talking and listening outcomes, I used to use video all of the time because it allowed me to both hit the English outcomes and the literacy outcomes that were specific to talking, particularly the ones about audience and register and tone and pace and all those things. But at the same time, I could also bring in very specific learning about film production. So here are just a few of the literacy outcomes for talking and listening that you would 100% hit if you were doing a video project. So the first one there, you know, I can engage with others and respond in ways that are appropriate to my role. I can show that I can value others' contributions, So they're making a video together as a group, right? Even if it's a small group, they're going to be consistently engaged in discussion. They're going to be developing one another's ideas. They're going to be talking, taking into consideration others' contributions in order to actually get to making that end product. And I found it was really easy to go around each group and get a sense of how these group discussions were progressing. I was able to make a couple of notes, gather some observations, which showed that children had actually met this benchmark. And that meant that we didn't have to sit down and have we're going to do group discussion today, because I was getting that group discussion naturally through an activity which sort of necessitates a lot of group discussion. The second one, then, I can recognise how the features of spoken language can help in communication, and I can use what I can learn, and I can recognise different features of my own and others' spoken language. So again, I found it really easy to see if they had done this, because obviously they're going to have to sort of speak to each other. They're going to have to direct each other potentially as well. They're going to have to come to an evaluative process when they're doing the filming of whether that is the right take because it sounds right and the performance has been good enough, etc., etc. They're also going to have to go through the process of writing a script potentially that is appropriate to the audience and purpose and the type of little film piece that they're making. So really, really easy to pick up on 2-03A. And then the last one, I can independently select ideas and relevant information for different purposes and organise essential information or ideas and any supporting detail in logical order and use suitable vocabulary to communicate effectively with my audience. So if they are making a film piece, like, they've had to organise that information and put it in a logical order in order to create a video. The process of making a video forces them to think about how the information is presented and what order it's presented and how they are going to film that. And what's interesting is if you're asking them to make, like, for example, a news report or a children's TV show or something that has like a really clear audience and structure that already exists, this can often be easier for them to actually meet these outcomes than, for example, in a solo talk situation where you're starting with a blank slate. So how many children have watched a lot of TED Talks or solo presentations? Not that many, but how many children have watched children's TV or have watched news reports? Quite a lot. So they know what the tone and the pace and the expression and the sort of structure probably needs to be, the register, you know, the tonal qualities of their voice. If I'm a newsreader, I'm going to be talking very seriously. But if I'm a children's TV presenter, I'll probably be talking upbeat and bright. So giving them a context that actually they're already familiar with, like the product of, can really help them to get to know some of these words that sort of seem abstract if you're just putting them in a solo talk situation. So if you talk about pace and how quickly someone talks, it's kind of hard to get them to understand that if they've never seen someone do a presentation in front of the class. Whereas they can build their understanding of pace and tone and expression through formats that they're familiar with, and then extend that to the unfamiliar territory of solo talk. So as I say, yeah, I think video presentations are super, super useful for assessing talk. Remembering, of course, that, you know, they are a created thing. There have been choices by the children, and they have often recorded, obviously, themselves, which means you've got an inbuilt recording of it, and you've got the evidence right there that you can kind of make use of and sort of assess them against. So With that all in mind and the thinking behind it, let's talk about how you actually do that. So we are in a position, if you have iPads, that you have it so easy in order to make video content because there are inbuilt tools on all of the devices. So every iPad has got a camera, it has got a microphone, and it's got the ability to edit video, which are the three things that you need to make a film. And all of these are built in as standard to the device, and iMovie is also on all devices as standard. So let's take a look at how actually easy it is to get started and to do something. So the first thing that you have to do, obviously, is you have to film the piece. So for example, if you're doing a news report, you would probably film a piece to camera. So you would have someone sitting or two people sitting at a desk and record them. You just do that through the camera as usual and make sure you save what it is that you need to save. And once you've got all of your pieces to camera, and they've spent time working on their talking and their register and their tone and all that sort of stuff, we can take all of our footage into iMovie, and this is where we can really elevate things. So if I just go into iMovie here, you will see that if I press on the plus, I can start a new movie, and I've got the choice of going through all my different pieces of media, but actually I always skip this phase. I just go straight into create movie because I like to start with a blank movie. So you can see here that I've got on the top right hand corner all of my media. So you can see it's organized as moments, video, photos, albums, backgrounds, files, etc. So I am going to just look through the videos. I'm going to see if I can find, there's one in particular that I'm looking for that might be quite far back now. Got this little piece to camera. It's obviously not me, it's like an animated version of me, but I'm going to just press plus to bring it in to the timeline. And you can see that I can move it back and forward with my finger. When I tap on the clip, I get this yellow bar around it, and I can either extend it or make it shorter. I can also tap on the bottom here. As long as I'm on the little scissors to split, I can just swipe down and split these two things in half. I can delete things. I can add in filters and put all different sorts of things over the top, etc., etc. However, what I actually want to do is, because this is going to be a news report, I want to add in the little box in the top right-hand corner that shows the little video or the little picture of whatever it is that I'm talking about. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back to my media tab. I'm going to just tap on, I'm going to go out of media. No, I will do a video actually. We'll go into all and we'll find a little video. We'll go here. And this time, rather than tap the plus, which adds it to the bottom layer, I'm going to tap the three dots and I'm going to get lots of different options. So cutaway, picture in picture, split screen, green screen, blue screen, which is built in, and we can look at that in a minute if you want. But the one that I'm looking for just now is picture in picture. If I tap on picture in picture, that was just because my line was not at the start. So if I tap in picture, it's going to take it and it's going to put it above my original picture, but it will also give me the overlaid video as that little news screen as well. So really, really easy to make news broadcasts, get videos sorted, etc., etc. I also have the option to put in like titles and all sorts of other things, but this is not, as I say, an iMovie course, so I'm going to kind of leave that at that. But as you can see, really easy to get started. As long as I've got a piece of video, I can easily bring in other pieces of video, splice them together, turn it into a full thing. And then once I'm done, all I have to do if I want to export it is tap on the share button, which is always the rectangle with the arrow pointing up the way. And I can just save video and it's going to export to my photo library where I can connect to the Apple TV and share it with the class, or I can send it to the teacher, or I can upload it to Teams, or I can upload it to Google Classroom, etc., etc. So that's a very, very basic rundown of iMovie. If you do want to learn more about iMovie, you can get in touch if it's for a project in particular. or if there is a huge demand for more materials on specifically on how to get started with iMovie, that's something that we can look at making. Now, there are other ways to edit video. There are loads of apps out there, but I think the point is that video allows you to capture that talking piece while also giving you opportunities to assess listening during the production process. So particularly in a group dynamic, you know, the way that it gives you that concrete record of what's been achieved just through the natural process of making a video, it kind of, for me, it just kind of makes sense. And another bonus element to it is that you can share it with the wider school community. You can celebrate the children's work, sharing the videos if you have permission on Twitter or with parent groups or in digital newsletters. And that introduces a real world audience element. So rather than just making a video so that the teacher can see it, they are making a video with a real world audience in mind, knowing that people are going to see it, having that pride and that excitement and being involved in the process. I think you're really, for me, you're on a winner. But I am a media teacher, so I am totally biased. I don't know if Louise or Yvonne wants to pop in with some stuff on your thoughts on video, making video and using that as a listening and talking vehicle.
Again, just broadens the options really for the kind of evidence that you can generate through whatever learning you're planning. Kerry, I was just thinking, and I know that quite a few secondary teachers have spoken about how much their young folk value that option. Not having to do it live necessarily might be more appropriate for some young folk. So yeah, just a brilliant, useful tool. Any thoughts, anybody out there? It'd be great to hear if you're already using any of the tools or how your children are using video.
I like the fact that you can, as you said, Yvonne, do it away from everyone else and basically rehearse it, isn't it, as well? Make sure it's right, get your takes. And I think the valuable information that you get from rewatching yourself as well and listening to yourself actually doing it is really, really helpful.
Yeah, because that's something that you don't get, I suppose, from a solo talk sort of scenario, is you kind of, it's one and done and you've done it and that's it. Yeah, that's a good point. I think as well, the other thing for me is the time saving as a teacher. Like because of the way that School of Media worked, if I assess the group discussion while they're making a video production, I then don't have to spend, you know, 2 double periods on group discussion because it's already, it's naturally happening and I'm naturally assessing that as we go.
Yeah, good point.
There's Emma saying they use iMovie and drama to take away the anxiety of doing it to a live audience and still being able to assess them as well, and being able to watch it back and self and peer assess. So Emma, like, listen, drama teachers and media teachers, we are cut from the same cloth, I think. I obviously don't need to convince you, but I'm glad that someone's backing me up. I do find it really, really useful as a teacher, having that evidence, having the ability to watch back, being able to double up, triple up assessments, really, really useful.
Yeah, and Sharon saying pupils present at assembly most weeks. They would love the picture-in-picture feature. Yeah. Yeah.
It's really fun, especially if you're doing news report stuff or weather things as well. The green screen for the weather is quite fun too. But yeah, picture in pictures. And it's so easy, right? Like you would think that would take a team of like graphic guys at the BBC to do it. They're just hitting picture in picture. They aren't actually just hitting picture in picture, but they could be. Okay, so time is going on, so I'm just going to finish up then with the last one, which is kind of similar to the video tools, but this is using audio tools. And I really wanted to talk about this because I think that this is another way of capturing talk that could be very useful for all, but it could be vital for some. So standing up in front of the class for some people is so anxiety inducing that it's just, you're not going to get the best out of them. And so moving to a video option where they can try again and they can recut and they can retake and all that stuff, great. Helps build their confidence. You will still have some children who don't want to be on camera. Even that is going to be quite, you know, terrifying for them, or it's going to kind of raise anxieties. So it is very easy for you with an iPad to just record audio. So to do audio recording, looking at things like maybe podcasting, where you can add a little bit of extra spice, so you can introduce elements such as like jingles and adverts and so on and so forth. It's a really good option for classrooms where there's maybe not a lot of space to film video, because filming video with lots of children in a small space can be quite tricky. And as I say, it's also really good for anyone who doesn't want to see themselves on video, or crucially, for those who are not allowed to be on video. So there's some of our children who we're not allowed, obviously, to have them on video, and for use within the classroom, that's fine. But where do they get that real world audience side of things if they can't publish video, but you could publish maybe just the audio? So like many things on iPads, there's lots of ways to do this, but I'm going to show you what I think is the most useful way to do it, which is through GarageBand. So this is, as it's not an iMovie tutorial, it's also not a GarageBand tutorial. It's just a really quick introduction to the app if you've never seen it before, and to show you hopefully how easy it is to get started. So as it uses a microphone, and I'm using the microphone for WebEx, this is a video part, so I'm just going to play this just now. Welcome to GarageBand. GarageBand is an app that a lot of people are quite scared of because they think it's highly complex. And the reality is GarageBand is quite complex. It's a very sophisticated app. Many people use it professionally to make music and professional podcasts. However, that doesn't mean that we cannot use it in a simple and effective way to record audio. Now, there are lots and lots of different audio recorders available on iPad. The benefit of getting to know GarageBand a little bit and the basics of it is that it comes as standard on every Apple device. So no matter which iPad you pick up, if it's a connected Falkirk one or not, it will have GarageBand on it. So if you learn the basics of this and you want to start including some audio recording in your practice, it means that no matter which classroom you're in, no matter which group of children or young people you're working with, you can be pretty certain that GarageBand is going to be there. Other apps, you might have to download them or make sure that they're already loaded onto the young people's devices. GarageBand will be there. So it is a little bit complex, but it is worth getting to know. So to get started, I am going to press on the plus button. And you can see I am invited, first of all, to choose a type of track. So I can choose various different things, instruments, etc., etc. But we're talking about talking today. So we are going to choose the audio recorder. And I'm just going to tap on voice in the bottom left there. And when I do that, we are brought into the GarageBand studio. And this is where people kind of freak out a little bit because it does look a little bit complicated with all the dials and stuff. However, it is really, really easy to get started. Now, there are two things that I would always do without fail when I reach this screen. And it is two things that I would tell every child and young person that I work with to do when they get to this screen. Number one is turn off the metronome. And number two is adjust the track length. So number one, the metronome. The metronome is that tick, tock, sound that you get when you are trying to stay on beat when you're recording music, but we are not recording music. We are recording voice, and we don't want that. That's quite distracting. So the metronome, just above the 7 at the top there, there's a little blue triangle. That is the metronome. And when it's blue, it is turned on. And if I tap on it, it turns white. And that means that it is turned off. So the first thing that I always do is turn off the metronome. The second thing is adjusting the track length. So you can see along the top there that we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And that is indicative of the 8 bars that we have to record with as standard. However, I am going to talk for a long time in my presentation, much longer than 8 bars. So I need that to be longer than 8 bars. So where it's got the 8, if you look just to the right of that, there's a little plus button. If I tap on that, you will see that it tells me that section A is 8 bars. If I tap on section A, you can see that I can manually adjust it, but what I want to do is I want to tap on automatic. And what that's going to do is that is just going to allow the GarageBand track to just record and record and record. So for as long as you're speaking, it will record. It's not going to cut you off. It's not going to stop. So number 1, turn off the metronome. Number 2, adjust the track length. Once you've done both of those things, you're ready to go. It is that simple. You're ready to start. And all you have to do is press on the record button. You'll get a little count in, and then you're ready to start talking. And you can talk and talk and talk and talk and record everything that you need to record. And when you're done, you can press stop. Now, it is highly unlikely that you are going to record everything in one take, especially children and young people. It's very difficult for them to record in one take. So what I can do is this little arrowhead at the top here, which is called the playhead, can be moved. And you can see anything that's blue has already got an audio track on it, and anything that's black along here on the right doesn't. So if I've already recorded this bit and I had to stop, I can just go to the next black part, tap on record, and it's going to let me record from that place that I have tapped on. So I can do multiple different takes, or I can do one section and then continue on to the next section and the next and the next and the next. And I just tap on stop, and you can see there's a clear divide just here between those two tracks. Now, something else that's quite interesting is this button just above the microphone in the middle that says fun. So we're currently recording a very serious podcast in our normal voice. However, we might have some children and young people who, for whatever reason, want to disguise their voice. And it's good to know that when you tap on fun, you do get a bunch of preset voices that you can use to disguise or distort your voice. So various different things. I'll just choose telephone and press play just now. And then you're ready to start. And you can see it makes me sound like I'm on the telephone. If I choose chipmunk, it makes me sound like I am a chipmunk, which is pretty good. Now, don't worry too much about what sounded like the double voice there. That's just because I am screen recording this as well, so it's picking up the playback too. That won't happen when you use your iPad as normal. Now, it might be that you want to edit some of the sound. It might be that you've got a little blip in the middle that you want to cut out. You've got some big long... Okay, so I'm just going to pause that there because as you can see, there's still 6 minutes left of that video and we do not have 6 minutes left on the call. So I'm going to stop it there because you kind of seen the starts of using GarageBand and how to get into it and how to start recording. And it is actually fairly straightforward to use, despite the fact that it does look really, really scary. Now, if you do want to find out more about a class that has done some podcasting, we do have this case study on the DigiLearnFalk website, which you can access either through scanning the QR code and going having a read and seeing what Katrina Martin in our class did at St Bernadette's Primary School. It's also one of the areas that I feel really strongly about. I think it's a really good tool to make use of. I think children really enjoy it. And there are lots of benefits in the talking and listening realm. It has that same impact on your assessment, I guess, in talking and listening that you get from video, because to make a podcast, they have to discuss, they have to, decide on the structure, they have to decide on the content and all that sort of stuff, and you get the recording of it at the end. So if you're interested in finding out more about podcasts, please do get in touch with me and I can support you with that. However, for now, I am going to hand over and I'm going to say thank you to the tech gods who have shunned me today, that everything went reasonably smoothly. And I believe the last few slides belong to Louise and Yvonne. Thank you so much, folks.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kerry, and well done for beating those tech issues. Louise, I'm conscious I've talked more than you have. Are there any points that you wanted to get across just in the closing remarks?
No, just I think it's a very valid point to have that option of doing an audio file rather than a video. In fact, I think that just now as I am talking, maybe gives proof to that, because some people really just cannot, they find it very distracting when they watch themselves on TV as well. Maybe so if they were recording something, it would be just too distracting for them and too stressful. So anything that kind of reduces that makes that a wee bit easier.
Yeah. And I think from the point of that slide really was just the way that Kerry described a lot of the tools really. I can imagine that you folks modelling, it sounds as though a lot of you have already been modelling tools and just thinking about the purpose of the tools and how they could be used and sparking the ideas in your children's heads. So that metacognitive element of it through the modelling was the main reason for putting that particular slide in. So don't feel that we need to linger on that one too much, Kerry. You might want to just scoot right to the end, bearing in mind we've only got 2 minutes left to go.
Yeah, I think, unless Louise, you have anything really pressing that you want to say about this one?
No, it was really just reiterating our mantra, to be honest, that, you know, what digital tools provide is obviously valuable to everybody. We can all learn from it. We can all improve the quality and the quantity of our work using them if we use them well. But for some children, it's just so important for them and enabling them to perform at the level of their ability and not just what they can maybe write, record, or speak orally, you know, if they're stumbling and get upset.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm just going to skip right to the very end because that is just about time. But thank you so much, everybody, for coming today. Please share with us through Twitter, either Falkirk Literacy or DigiLearnFalk, about how you go and use some of these tools. And I am aware